question about the commodification of black culture. So the other day, Isaac brought it up to me actually. You know when there was the sort of racist chanting at the England Bulgaria thing, Nike who have released I think a black issue t-shirt or something, black issue t-shirt or something. So obviously they spoke out about the racism there, but then they also said black t-shirt. Basically, so, which seems to be that they're trying to profit off black culture to an extent. So firstly, the first question is black the new gold? Like, is that what companies and brands and stuff are seeing as this is what's popular, so we're going to commodify as much as possible? And the second question is, where do you draw the line between appropriation, appreciation, appropriation, and vulturism? And is that for us to draw the line? Is it possible to draw the line?
If I was to jump in, I would say, the only reason why I'd say no to is black the new gold is I'd have an issue with the word new. I think it's always been gold. I think now we're seeing it in a slightly different way. I think black is becoming a bit more synonymous with protest now. And so black protest is the new gold. But black talent has always been gold. Black culture has always been gold. Black human lives and bodies have been gold at one point. I don't want to get too deep on it, but you know, like everything about black has been sold at some point. So now someone's just gone, hold on a second, this whole Black Lives Matter thing, the protest, the police brutality. Okay, we can make money with this, we can do something with this. And we saw Pepsi try it. They tried it with Kendall Jenner, and she sold police brutality with the can of Pepsi, and everyone said no. And so a lot of ad agencies went right back to the drawing board, like, how do we do this? So yeah, of course Nike is going to drop the BHM sneakers and have the Black History Month t-shirt ready for you. Of course they're going to do that, and they do it with all of these movements. They don't really care about social justice. Every time a company puts together a corporate social responsibility policy, it's leveled up with their bottom line. Nobody's trying to go broke, trying to do the right thing, all right? So let's be honest here. When they say they're supporting Pride, they got their product right next to it. They got their branding right next to it, because what they're trying to do is trying to get some of the pink pound. So in the same way, when we look at that, I'm not surprised that Nike would do that. It's just part and parcel of the way business goes. And to be honest, let's be honest with ourselves. And let's really take a good look at ourselves. Most of us are willing to sell the culture. Most of us are. Because the thing is, if the Queen says to any of the black people in here, the Queen says, I want to pay you £50,000 to come and speak to us about the negative effects of colonialism, how many of you are going to say, no, like you could just return all the jewels and stop the colonial debts and blah, blah, blah? How many people are going to fight that cause? No, you're going to take 50K, you're going to go there, you're going to think you're brave, you're going to say something, and then let you go home, and everything's the same again. You've been personally enriched. And to be honest, we have to be honest with ourselves, because I know that there are some times where I fall into this category, kind of. Not 100%, but kind of. And we have to ask ourselves, look, whenever there's a Black History Month event, and some company says, oh, we want to do something for Black History Month, will you come in and talk to us about disadvantaged backgrounds, blah, 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 and then you get paid, you go home, you tell them all this stuff, whatever it is, and everything goes back to normal. Yeah, because we're willing to take individual gains sometimes. And that's how it's always worked. You can always placate the masses by paying off one or two people. Then you don't have to give everybody their money. You don't have to give everybody fair treatment. Just do it for one or two people. You put it forward as a figurehead. Look, we just brought so and so in, he spoke. And everyone goes, all right, cool, they're trying. And then we move on. Sad, but the brain as well. But let's be honest, like that's what it is. Like, if we get to the point where we don't sell the culture, if you could get consensus on like all black people who create a genre, for example, say we're not selling this culture. It's only our own labels that are going to play this music. We're going to make sure that if anybody wants to play it, they have to do distribution through us. And if not, we just put it on our own platforms. Then yeah, we own our stuff.
I think it comes back to the earlier question I asked her, because is it a question of black people are too willing, or not too willing, but black people are willing to sell our culture, or is it a question of we don't have control over the culture in the first place? Because like I said, we lack ownership and we're not the biggest consumers, so...
Yeah, but we have control over the culture. So we have control over the culture socially, economically. And the thing is, we're constantly trading our social power for economic gain. So we let the economic go so we can hold on to the social. We're tastemakers, let's not lie about it. If we say something's cool, it's cool. But we don't monetize it fully, because what we do is we go, do you know what, it's really hard to monetize being a tastemaker. It's really hard. You know, it takes a lot of work, there's a lot of work that's gone into this. So then, an existing infrastructure that has distribution, has platforms, it has A&R development, they've got fancy offices, they've got big studios and so on. They come to you and say, we're going to pay you to be a tastemaker. I'm going to pay you handsomely. Then you go, all right, cool. Then you're on their platform. Then they tell you, we don't want to hear this anymore. We don't want to hear any more of this. And you go, do you know what? Rent's due, so yeah, okay, this is what I'm going to do. But if you said, look, no beats, I'm not taking it. BBC, no thank you, I'm going to keep doing my podcast, and I'm just going to keep going directly to the fans, I'm going to keep it true and honest, blah, blah, blah. Then you can say whatever you like, but then you don't get paid as much. So that's my point. Yeah, every single one of us is willing to sell the culture or something.
I think like what you said is really interesting, but I think like especially when I saw this question about blackness being the new gold, the first thing that came to me is, I don't know if you guys have seen recently, but Davido has the new Risky video out. The music video. It's actually shot at a short on a council estate in London. Now, if you guys know anything about Davido, he's very wealthy. Like, one of his lyrics is, like, don't bother me, don't you know I'm the son of a rich man. Like, Davido decided to study music at university and there was no music department at his university, so his dad created one. And this kind of thing is like, what was it? People are like, people always talk about how I have a rich dad, work hard, so you can say that your kids can say the same thing. But I think it's really interesting, right? Because like this is someone who is like black, but like he could choose to shoot absolutely anywhere in the world, but he's come to like an estate, and like blackness is an estate. So I think black is definitely social capital. It's definitely like commodifiable, but it's who is able to make money from that. You made like a really interesting point about like us being willing to like sell ourselves in order to like make financial gain, and even us even having that option before us, like, do I decide to sell myself and become slightly more commercial, or do I be more outspoken? Like, we have that opportunity from a position of privilege. Like, if you speak to someone who is really really black and working class, you know, like for example, I went to a talk the other day on someone who's written like multiple books about like the knife crime problem, the gang problem, from a real point of honesty, like I was involved in this, and who's been writing books for 10 years and like does not have the option to sell his soul to the mainstream because they don't want to hear the nuances and the real complexity of his story. So I do think, to an extent, your point that you made about it not being a new god, I think is really pertinent. Black people have always had culture, we've always been culture, but I don't think, I do think black is a new gold, but I think it's just that certain black people, and probably all of us here at Imperial University are possibly fall into that camp of those certain black people are able to capitalise and certain people are not, I think, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the essential point I'm making.
Yeah.
I'm making the point that if there's a power structure and you want to placate the underclasses, you raise one or two up, and then you make them your poster childs, you give them opportunities and so on, and then you go, see, these guys did it, what's wrong with the rest of you?
Yeah.
So you never fix any structural issues, you just do the sort of temporal work, you do the shiny stuff on the outside, right?
Yeah.
And I'm saying that every single one of us, given the chance to be the shiny stuff on the outside, are willing to take it. Let's be honest, it's really, really hard not to. The truth is, I'll let you know, after I finish saying all of this, if they call me right now, I'm sending all of you out right now. I've got daughters, I've got mouths to feed. So if you understand the way that like the game is played, and you understand the power structures that hold this thing, then you go, it's not just as simple as lack of ownership. It's also the fact that most of us don't believe in ownership enough to withhold it. We don't even believe in, black people hold gold like it's mud, right? And if someone comes over to us and goes, this is, I tell you what, I'll give you 50 pounds for that. You're like, all right, go on then. But it's like, we look at that stuff. Even Nigeria consistently now sells its crude oil to somebody else, have it refined and ship back, right? The resources we have, knowing what to do with it and being able to process it is a different story. And that's what consistently happens with our stuff. Grime only really came back into our consciousness in the past, 5 or 6 years, right? We were done with it. The grime artists became funky house artists or something, or they went to work before. I don't know what grime artists did at that time when everyone just sort of like let go of it. And then it became commercially viable again, and then now we all care about it, we want to hold on to it, it's our culture, blah, blah, blah. Now what I'm saying to you is this, when we really look at the way we've treated our talent, our culture, I don't know whether to describe it as we don't know how to profit, or we hold it in such regard that we don't see everything as for profit. I don't know which side it is of us, but what I know is it never really reaches its full profit potential until existing ownership structures give it the validity, and then we go, oh, it's actually worth something. If we really valued our own stuff, it would be worth something to us way before the labels come along. You see what I'm saying? And when I say worth something to us, I don't just mean like we like it, I mean like we're willing to put money down for it, not pirate it. You see what I'm saying? Like we're willing to pay big money for what they're doing. So it's kind of like, Dizzy Russell, okay, when I Love You came out properly released, most people had heard it already. It was already big on pirate radio. Everyone had heard I Love You. I Love You was already like a street hit. The moment it comes out on there, all of a sudden people look at Dizzy Russell in a different light. He's got a music video now, he's got the look, he's got the academics tracksuit, you hear he's doing a record deal, he's about to drop an album. Everything in people's perceptions of him changed at that point. There was nothing different. The song was still out. We already knew I Love You. But we didn't value it until Relentless was like, all right, I think we can do something with this kid. Until it was like, look, it looks like he's blowing up. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. And that's the problem. If we started like really rocking with people before they quote unquote blow up, then we could start blowing people up and still own the process and create the vehicles with which we blow people up. I would love to see a day where blowing up doesn't look like being on BBC or Beats Radio, blah, blah, blah. That's seen as corny. If you're really blowing up, you're on insert black on platform.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I feel like you made like loads of points that are super like important and really of value. Sometimes like I struggle with like arguments that suggest it's some particular like inequity on behalf like that is inherent to black people, as in like, do you know what I mean, when people make arguments like if only the black community would come together, if only the black community would do this, although like I completely agree with a lot of what you said, it's really important and dope points that you're making. Like in the black British context, I think it's something like 45% of black children live in poverty, right? So it's like there's a structural oppression that if someone has £10,000 in the bank and they say, I'm not going to sell this, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do this, that's fine. But if someone has £0 in the bank and then they then go and say, I have to do this to survive, right? The issue is not really with that person. I think the issue is with the structure that put them in a position that they have £0. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not really a choice in that respect. But I do agree, like ownership is something so important, and I definitely do agree that sometimes we don't appreciate the value of our culture. But I also think that's like a structural thing of how are people made to feel worthless about themselves. Like, for example, I'm from Nigeria. So much of our culture was like erased and taken away during colonialism. We're only rediscovering the half. Do you know what I mean? So like that is hundreds and hundreds of years of devaluation of our culture. Some of it which will never be recovered. But I do think everyone is making like really good points.
Can I quickly say something? I don't want to talk too much, but I 100% agree with you. And we cannot ignore the structural problems that But I think we also need to stop just looking at them as structural barriers and problems and issues. They are structural opportunities as well, because we wouldn't have hip hop, grime, all of these things without the oppression. The thing about the oppression is it actually gives birth to this whole new genre that is now actually an opportunity for us to pull ourselves out. Do you see what I'm saying? Now, all we need now is to elevate beyond some of the side effects of poverty, which is a mentality that's short-sighted, for example. That's one of the side effects of poverty, is that people become very much about what they can get now, as opposed to what they can build over a period of time. It's a luxury, let's be honest, to be able to think about long-term, but if you're thinking about what you need to eat today. But if we can overcome some of the mental aspects of it, then we look at how we invest in what we have for the long term, as opposed to what we can get from somebody willing to pay us today. That's what I'm talking about. Let's be honest, this is not palatable, and not many people are going to like this. It doesn't sound nice, but Frank Sinatra was bankrolled by the mob, right? He had mafia money behind him. There are so many drug dealers with money who are willing to squander it on Italian designers, French champagne, and German-made cars, and brag about it. Now, if those same drug dealers decided that there's no way my community is going to be languishing, and this guy's talented, he hasn't got the money to really put his product out how he needs to, I'm bankrolling the money. And obviously, I'm not advocating loan sharking or whatever. But what I'm saying is that if the finance was actually made available, like actually happened in America, let's not lie about it. Yeah, NWA was financed by drug dealers, and now they got a movie and we'll celebrate the straight out content, but the truth is, it was drug dealers' money. You know, Jay-Z talks all the time about how he started off. So let's just be honest, like, the only difference between those drug dealers and some of the drug dealers we have here is that not all of them, or not all of the ones here, realize the longevity of what can be done with these funds. They think about that short term, they want to blow it now. I don't want to put any names out, but I know there are some in the UK who do see long-term vision. They have put their money into these things, and you know, that's part of some of the success we've seen. Let's be honest, and I don't want to break anyone's heart, but some of your favorite rappers are bankrolled by drug money. Don't say you were surprised when you saw Mike GLC with Talisa at the airport getting shifted.
Coming back to the point about like the US scene versus the UK scene. Not necessarily drug dealing and the bankroll by drug dealers money, but just in general, yeah. If we're talking about